My name is Nick Jones. I'm a Navy Cross recipient. I served as a Marine Raider for 8 years, 12 total in the Marine Corps. This is everything I'm authorized to tell you. Do not try to chase the dragon. Real things happen out there. People die, people get hurt, and then you come back with these unforeseen wounds that you didn't think of because you fantasized about it over the movies. But when you're there, it's as real as you could imagine. So I was Marine Raider. That's who I was. I don't know who Nick Jones is. I just knew who Staff Sergeant Jones was. But like, that was my life. MARSOC is the Marine Special Operations Command. My first deployment with my Marine Raider team was January 2016. We went to northern Iraq, the Kurdistan region. ISIS had kind of taken over that whole region in 2014, and we were tasked with helping the Kurdistan region kind of employ some order back there. We got assigned to train some Kurdish Special Forces units, and they were really itching to take back some of their towns that had been taken. So whenever we did our turnover, it was very specific. When we got to this one specific area, this team was like, look, like, we haven't seen much here. It's been very slow. Like, we may have dropped 5 bombs on this whole deployment. Well, within minutes of him saying that, we start taking direct machine gun fire. One of the reasons why I got selected for this team was my mortar capabilities. And they said, you are going to be our weapons expert in the team. You're going to teach us how to use mortars because we're going to a place where we're probably going to need these. So turned from very non-kinetic, so hardly any combat before we got there, to unleashing and us dropping hundreds of bombs and hundreds of mortars, and it was a good deployment. One major factor for us to make it a good deployment is no teammates got hurt. We gathered so much intelligence and information on these towns. Our team ended up tallying up 398 confirmed kills. We had over 200 airstrikes. I dropped probably 500, 120 millimeter mortars. Got to employ the sniper rifles several times and things like that. So overall, being able to employ our combat skills, being able to employ multiple different, arrays of skills that we have within the teams, we got to really test out a lot. Some of the biggest risks that, we face theater to theater is those unknown, tactics that the enemy can do. You never know where that IED or improvised explosive device could be. You never know where that sniper could be. But where ISIS jumped to a whole nother level is they almost became like a conventional force. But then they also had money and they had equipment. I remember specifically one time we had this huge oil refinery or oil rig right behind us, and it was the silliest thing to set up behind that, but I had no idea at the time. My mortar team was set up here. We had a couple machine gun positions set up in this bunker. We were softening this target for our Kurdish forces to be able to go into and hopefully take back this village. Well, as we started the offensives and started doing our softening, like mortar strikes, airstrikes, things like that, we started taking indirect fire. We do some counter mortar stuff, and we actually destroy their mortar team. Well, then they wheeled out their artillery, and they had full-blown 105 artilleries and anti-tank. They were probably 20 millimeter cannons, maybe 30 millimeter cannons. And they were shooting huge airburst, like machine gun rounds at us. Me and my element leader at the time, I was looking at him like, dude, we're gonna freaking die here. Like, this is insane. We had a very easy identifiable feature right behind us, and they were just like, well, we know right where they're at. Like, we're just gonna keep hammering them. And we found a lull in the fight, and we ended up getting, we collected our stuff, grabbed the mortar tube. We had to leave certain things there, and we had to move positions, or else we were going to get killed. As soon as you come home from that 6-month deployment, you're thrown into an 18-month workup, which is a training for the next deployment. My second deployment with MARSOC was in January of 2018. when I went to Jordan. Jordan was a very non-kinetic type of deployment. We went there and trained the Jordanian Special Forces in Amman, which was a very cool historic area. Looking at what is success on a deployment versus this type of deployment, it's different because it's not a combat deployment. And that's what we wanted, you know. Now, like, understanding as an adult, like, that was a very successful deployment because I got to successfully train our partner force, make very good relations, and, you know, build up those guys to an operational standards. The Marine Corps and MARSOC is very unique because most places like Green Berets or SEALs, you can do it straight from initial contract to go to BUDS or go to the 18 X-ray course, which are the Navy SEALs or Green Berets pipeline. However, with MARSOC, you have to have a certain time in service and experience under your belt to even try to go to selection. I graduated high school December 2009, and I left for boot camp January 20th of 2010. And I had a seat to go to assessment and selection in January of 2013. So right at my 3-year mark. So I was moving super fast to try to get there. And the things that we look for as a new person coming into a MARSOC team or a Raider team, they have to be able to be critical thinkers, think on their own, think outside of the box. We want people who question things. We want people who push the envelope. We want natural leaders, people who are very good at working in teams. So everything from day one when you show up, you are no longer Sergeant Jones or Corporal Jones. You are candidate number 023. And that's what you're referred to for the rest of the 6 weeks. You do 3 initial weeks in North Carolina where it's a lot of like running, it's a lot of swimming, it's a lot of ruck running, and a lot of like preparation for land navigation courses. They're intense. It's the swimming, when we do the specific workouts, there's never really a finite time or distance. It's always just intensity. You're treading water with bricks or with rifles above your head, or just like, you know, and you get in these tight little circles and you're trying to tread water and you're kicking each other and you're like gasping for air, pulling people under. It is the most humbleizer in the course because that is one of the biggest droppers. Like, people will drop like flies in the pool. They'll immediately raise their hand and say, I quit. There's a time standard for everything. Assessment and selection is more so they want to see that you have the heart. They want to see that you have the ability to not only work as an individual, but work under pressure with a team. We do a lot of 12-mile timed runs, and those are set to a time standard, and then the 10-mile time standard. So you have to complete it in under 2.5 hours with a 45-pound ruck before food and water. And then the land navigation is also 45-pound pack. So you always have that pack, and then you always have a rifle with you. So the rifle it's a dummy rifle, but it's still weighted appropriately to resemble that of a fully loaded out rifle. You get into a blacked out van, you drive to an unknown location, and we learn how to use map and compass protractors very well. So no GPS, no electronics or anything like that. You get told the coordinates of where you're at and the coordinates of your first point. So you have to plot both of those on the map. You go to the instructor and you say, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm going. And then you have to navigate there. So with just a compass, your pack, and a rifle, and it's timed. You have no idea what the time is. There's no talking, there's no teamwork, no nothing. So it could be anywhere from 3 clicks, which is like 3,000 yards or meters, to 10 kilometers. If you've ever felt lost before, it is a very overwhelming feeling. And you have to move fast, so it's hard. You have to continue to think on the fly. I remember climbing over a fence. I have this random farm field in front of me, and I'm like, this is not on my map. Where am I? Like, I was freaking out. I took my pack off and I threw it, and I'm like, I am so lost. I was like, what is this doing for me? Nothing. Like, get my pack back on and start running. Like, I need to get back. And luckily I wasn't very far off. I was just like so confused that like I was tired, I was confused, and I was like almost gave up. And I was like, no quit. So you do that 3 weeks in North Carolina, and then you go up to Virginia and you do the rest up there. And it is mainly all land navigation and team building exercises. So you're basically doing land navigation from sun up to sundown, and then you sleep in the woods. We started with 144 candidates in phase 1, and we left with 80, and then only 40 of us got selected. So it's very challenging. Once I got selected in April of 2013, they sent me back to my parent unit, which was 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. And I had from April to January of 2014 to kind of prepare to go to individual training course, or ITC. There is still the what ifs of if you don't pass this school, if you don't pass the 9 months, you get put back into the needs of the Marine Corps. You might go do something totally random. So it is one of those very intimidating factors of like, holy crap, like I have to pass this. So when I started January of 2014, you start in different phases. So phase 0 is communications phase. So you do several weeks, I think it's 3 weeks of communication phase, and then 3 weeks of SEER, which is survive, evade, resist, and escape course. You get to live out in the woods and like catch rabbits with snares and make fires and stuff like that. I'm a Kansas City boy, so I was like, it was all foreign to me, you know. So it was really cool. And then you go into phase 1, which is small unit tactics. So talking about the guys that come from different MOSs, military occupational specialties, they get to learn the small unit tactics from nothing. So we go over the basics. Everything starts with the basics. And at the end of each phase is a culminating exercise of something very intense and grueling. So at the end of our phase 1 of that small unit tactics phase is what we call our Raider Spirit. A lot of people talk about Hell Week in BUDS. This is our Hell Week. You're very sleep deprived. You're walking through the woods and you set up these bases, which is just you sitting in a 360-degree circle with all of your guys on security facing outboard to make sure that nobody, ambushes us. Well, the instructors will come with their flashbangs, find a guy sleeping, throw it in the middle of us and be like, boom, like now you all need to evade. So like then we get up and we run and we've got casualties and they're on our back and it's like all night long, all day long, you're moving, you're not resting, like it was intense. The military has a very good way of like taking very fun things and making them not fun because they're like, how much weight can we get on you? How long can we do this for? How, tired can we make you while doing this? The ammunition, for one thing, you have to carry a certain amount on your body. It's very heavy. If you continue to carry more, you can really only have one real gun and one sidearm. So like my normal loadout would be 6 magazines of 30 rounds for my M4. I carried a M203 grenade launcher that shoots a 40 millimeter grenade. So I had 12 of those, and then I had a pistol on my side with 3 magazines for that. I remember having an XL size of 800 milligram ibuprofens and sleep aid and caffeine, and I'm like, I'd take ibuprofen before the day starts, in the middle of the day, take more caffeine, then sleep aid to go to sleep, and I'm like, this cannot be healthy. Once you pass that, we went into our CQB phase, like more advanced shooting styles. So we would start with getting on the flat range and working on very slow fundamentals, transitioning from rifle to pistol, full combat load, night vision shoots, and then the ultimate train up is to get into a shoot house. It is very much a crawl, walk, run phase. That is one of the most intense phases because it's a very, very pass or fail thing. You know, you could have some really, really good guys with all the right attributes and characteristics to become a really good Marine Raider, but then they get to that phase and they just can't shoot as well as they can operate as a person, and they end up getting dropped. Shoot, move, communicate is what we say. Like, you need to be able to do that very well. After the shooting phase, you go into like your special reconnaissance or reconnaissance phase. So you learn how to take pictures, you learn like some sniper techniques, and then that kind of culminates into doing an exercise of watching a village and reporting, taking photos. And then you go into the irregular warfare, unconventional warfare type of stuff, where you fall into a guerrilla style force where you go in and you train these people from nothing. So it's role playing at its finest, but it's very fascinating, the things that you get to do and get to build and train a partner force. And like the conventional Marines actually come out to help us out, so we get to train them. And then at the end of all of that, you go through a board. So you do like an interview at the end. We started ITC with about 90, and then we graduated with 40. So we lost about half. And a lot of those happened at the very beginning. Once I got to MARSOC, I had that notion that it would be very fast paced and a lot of cool stuff. When I graduated ITC, I had to go back into a classroom setting for 6 months and learn modern standard Arabic. I thought it was cool. However, I did not like school. So it was very hard for me to sit in a classroom for 8 hours and study. And I was like, I just hope that it's not like this, there's no way, but I'm still in school, I understand. And then I got assigned to my team, 2nd Marine Raider Battalion, Hotel Company Team 2. They had a lot of like legends within that company. Well, and then I check into my team room and they're like, hey, our first exercise is we're going to this place called Busco Beach. We're taking dirt bikes, ATVs, side-by-sides and stuff like that, and we're gonna camp out. It's like, no way. Sure, we travel down there, we take our campers down there, and we set up tents, we set up a grill, we do all this stuff, and then we unload all of the side-by-sides and the dirt bikes and the four-wheelers. I'm riding dirt bikes with a gun on my back, and then we have night vision on, and I'm like, no way. Needless to say, it held up its expectations for what I envisioned it to be, because immediately after that, I went to jump school, and then shortly after that, we finished our training. I got put into a team that was about to deploy right away. My final deployment with MARSOC was January 2020. We were tasked with going back to northern Iraq. In 2016, I was a little bit south of Mosul in an area called Kirkuk. This time, I was up in Mosul. At this time in 2020, I'd like to believe ISIS was basically back down to an insurgency level. And they are now in sleeper cells, they're hiding in caves and using these auxiliary type of fighting techniques. And then in March of 2020, there was a large tasking that came down that they had been watching these intricate cave systems. Our sister team over there got tasked originally with this operation. And then next thing you know, their partner force all came down with this sickness that they come to find out was COVID. And they were like, hey, 8232, like you guys are ready, operationally capable right now. This is now your mission. So we had about 5 days to plan for this thing that these guys had been planning for weeks. I'm in charge with the tactical maneuver and the security placement and basically the assault structure of what we were going to do. So March 8th, 2020 was insert. And we get flown in on helicopters. We had a team of probably 15 operators, U.S. service members with me, and then 25 Iraqi partner force. In this instance, there was a go and no-go criteria, and it was like an increasing of forces over double the amount that was already on ground. So we had seen 7 fighters on the ground, and within 24 hours, we start getting intelligence updates that there's now 8, there's 9, there's 10, there's 11. Now there's like 19 fighters on the ground. And so they over doubled their size of fighters that they had seen in and around the area. I wish I knew why we still went in. We voiced our opinion I know that there were things being said behind the scenes. I don't know specifics. We work best at night. That's our strong suit. And we were also told to continue to wait until daytime. But, it doesn't change the fact that, they still told us to go, and we flew in and tried to do the job to the best of our capabilities. And then we finally get to our first cave that we're going to clear. And I get up there, and our initial thought is like, hey, we're going to throw in some grenades. We have some anti-structural munitions that we throw up there. They're very condensed, like very intense explosives. And then as dust settles, I go up there and I look, and there's a dead ISIS fighter sitting in there, completely covered in dust, like white face, white armor. He had an M16. Up in the corner, there was a mounted machine gun. This guy had this cave fortified. He was ready. He was ready to fight. He knew that we were coming. And I can see it right now in my face. Like this guy's whole posture and face can still burned into my vision to this day because of what happened. And as soon as I'm going to go into this cave and start doing this clear, just hell opened up, and just machine guns, explosions, and just chaos burst open. And then I hear there's a casualty. I'm like, holy crap. And this all happened like within seconds. And then the next call comes in, there's an Eagle down. And an Eagle is a U.S. service member. So when you hear that, like, it's immediate gut wrench, gut drop. I'm like, I gotta do something. And I felt it. And then a second later, another Eagle down. I was like, nope. So I turned to my Iraqis. I was like, you guys, like, watch this cave. Like, don't go anywhere. Hold security here. I gotta go. And I grab my gun and I just run over there. And I get down there and there's still smoke and machine gun fire happening. And I was like, what is happening? And there's just people frozen on the mountainside that nobody could really tell me. So I was like, okay, well, I'm jumping in this ravine. So I jumped into there, and there's one French fighter in there. His English wasn't very good. So, guns pointed. I was like, okay, I get it. I still had my night vision goggles on my head. And like, if we ever go into caves, like I flip them down. I bring that up because I start climbing up. And then as soon as my like night vision goggles poke up, and then I see like right over the crest of this rock, I see this huge mouth opening, and like the fortifications and the rocks and the built up barricades that they had, it was just like, it was intense. It was so intense. I don't even know what other word to use. And it was dark, and I see this body laying right there, and all of this happened within a split second. But as soon as I see this, I come up and I take all of this in, just like I just immediately start getting pinned down by automatic fire. I'm like, I'm gonna get killed if I move up any further. Like this, they've got me pinned down. And this French guy starts yelling something. He was like yelling, roll. And these legs fly up in the air. I thought this dude was dead. Like, had to have been dead, how much fire was going on. And so then I stand up as fast as I could, and I just start shooting as fast as I can into this cave. And I run up, and somehow I grab this dude's legs, and I pull him back, still shooting. And I finally like throw him down these rocks, and this French guy grabs him. And I just continued to shoot and cover this guy as he's moving. And it was wild. But so that we ended up pulling out the French operator that had been wounded previously. I had a U.S. guy come, an Eagle come up, and he was like, hey, I'm coming down. Like, what do you need? And I said, dude, I don't know where the U.S. guys are. I don't know if there's still more casualties, if that was a fake call. Like, I didn't see anybody else down there, but we're going to die if we go this way. And so we finally find a spot to go to up on top of basically the roof of the cave. And I had the snipers. The snipers were like, hey, I think I see a body right here. Continue to walk up. And I walk up as slowly as I can. And as soon as I get to the edge, that's when I see Mo and Diego down there. Both of them killed pretty much right in front of the cave. And man, I'll tell you, that was one of the... It was a very gruesome sight. I mean, I knew immediately that they were gone. Mo was a little bit more believable that he might still be awake or alive because he was sitting up and his hand was on his gun still. His eyes were open. So, maybe there was some life left in him. And So I whispered his name and there was nothing. And then like the closer I got, that's when, they knew that I was there. So I had to take a step back, and that's when I realized, like, hey, it's time. I have to take this over. It's no longer a cave clearance operation. It's a recovery mission. We've got to get these guys out of here. I called up to the commander, the commander in charge, and told him Mo and Diego are dead, plain language. And they didn't believe me, because how is the executive officer of the company dead, and how is the team chief dead? I was like, it doesn't make sense to me either. I don't know what else to tell you, but they're gone. And so I was like, I'm going to try to get them out. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to continue to go up there and I'm going to try. So I went up there and took as many grenades as I had, and I basically laid on top of their roof and looked under it like I'm looking under a table, and just started chucking grenades in there. I even had a teammate hold my belt so I could get even further down there as they're shooting at me, and my snipers shooting this close to my head. But it was one of those situations, man. It was so complex that I just didn't know what to do. And I said, okay, screw it. Like, I'm going to go back in one more time. I'm trying to go up there and make this move to get these guys out. Everybody is shooting. As I get like right up to the edge, and I feel like I'm gaining the confidence, I'm just going to jump down there. I just get smacked with a baseball bat in my shin, and I was like, holy crap, what was that? And I like jumped back and kind of took cover and sat down. I was like, dude, I think I just got shot. And I felt immediately this sense of failure. And I was like, these guys are still down here. I just got shot. Like, how are they going to get back out? Like, I don't know how this is going to happen. Like, it was, and now like pretty much everybody is running very low on ammunition, grenades, water. It was March, but it was still hot. And the commander said, hey, you guys have to fall back. Like, we're going to wait for the quick reaction force to come in and take over for you guys, and then they'll take over from here. I didn't want to leave, but I knew that I had to. I couldn't walk at that point. So I had a medic come down from a hoist on a helicopter and pick me up off the side of the mountain. And, this is kind of when I realized that the majority of my trauma started was I get on the helicopter, and the medic asked me how my pain is. I was like, yeah, it's bad. So he's like cutting my pants off and cutting my shirt off, and then hits me with ketamine. And immediately, like, I go into this like insane visual trip. Like, the blades of the helicopter are spinning, and I hear woo, 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 and then next thing you know, I get sucked back down into the mountain. And I'm having this horrible trip of Mo and Diego, and I could tell that they were dead. And they were screaming for me to get them out. And my arms are strapped into the stretcher, and I couldn't talk, but like I kept trying to push my push to talk to them and be like, I'm coming for you, I'm coming, like I'm right there. And then I have this vision burned into my head where I'm reaching out and Mo is reaching up to me, and my hands are this close together, and I'm like right there. And the next thing you know, I get woken up in the hospital, and I'm like bust into tears, crying. I'm like, what the hell? I was right there. I was about to get them out. Like, what did you do? And I'm like blaming the doctors. I'm like delirious. Like, I didn't know what was happening. And then finally, like, I get wheeled next to the French special operator, and he was shot through and through in the left leg, blew out his calf, shot in the top of the head. He's like, I can't hear very well. I was like, yeah, you got shot in the head. The Delta Force guys came in that night. Killed a whole bunch of bad guys in the cave, ended up recovering our teammates and bringing them home that night. I think we both actually stood on crutches as they wheeled them by in the body bags, and it was a very, very intense but glorifying moment that we know that everybody came home. We did the ramp ceremony the next day, and that is a ceremony where we drape the caskets and the American flags, and we put them up onto the C-17, the big transport plane, to fly them back to the States. So, yeah. After that was it was a tough time. I tried to stay in country because my wound, it wasn't a through and through. Basically made it to where I couldn't walk, and gave me this super rare nerve syndrome called complex regional pain syndrome. Within weeks, I finally raised my hand and was like, look, like Iran's bombing Iraq again. I need to leave. Like, I'm a liability here. I can't move with kit on. I need to go home and get surgery. So we reach out to Walter Reed, get a surgery scheduled, finally get back home. And this is, the start of my grueling recovery. The beginning of COVID, the beginning of the shutdown of the world. April 1st, 2020 is when I got home. Thought it was an April Fool's joke. Like, why didn't anybody come visit me in the airport? Nobody from the Marine Corps, nobody from the Special Operations Command. They didn't come see me. The pain I was dealing with from the injury itself was excruciating. I don't know if you've hit like a nerve, like your funny bone or something, and you get all the tingles that shoot down your arm. Well, it was like that constantly. I could barely walk on my own. I walked with a cane for almost 2 years. A lot of that time I had crutches, and then I would sometimes walk with a walker. It was a constant, every minute reminder of the mission. I could not get it out of my head because it was like, I wake up, I move, like my leg hurts. Now I'm thinking about the mission. Finally, they ended up amputating several nerves out of my leg. Continued complications there. So I had to get a spinal cord stimulator installed in my back with wires going through my spine to regulate pain in my leg, and like all of these crazy things. And I'm like, I'm going to live like a cyborg now with no nerves in my leg. Like, what is this life coming to, And finally, in July and August, we finally got to bury our teammates. They do this thing called roll call at the beginning of these ceremonies where they start calling off certain names. Then the last name that they call off is the one that died. And they call, Captain Novice, Captain Novice, Captain Moses Novice. And then I just broke down. I couldn't control it. I couldn't control the voice or the noise coming out of my... It was like this insane mental breakdown that I had right there in the middle of this ceremony. I walked into the back and I found the first medical officer that I could, and I was like, I need help. I can't do this on my own anymore. Like I'm hurting so bad that like something has to change. I need something. So finally I was admitted into a treatment program at the Intrepid Spirit Clinic, a traumatic brain injury clinic, and I got to go do physical therapy, occupational therapy, all of these different modalities. And then I started to kind of dabble into like the more like holistic side and doing yoga and doing breath work and meditation. When I tell you I did art therapy, I went into this art studio and like they had this whole section there, and I was like, look, like I want to try this. I've tried everything else and I can't seem to break this shell. Like I need something. And they sat me down with this 4x6 note card and a whole bunch of negative emotions on one page and positive emotions on another, and I just circled all these negative ones. I was like, this is everything that I'm feeling right now. And she's like, draw it. All of a sudden, like I start drawing, and just like something took over, and I started drawing the mission. I started drawing mountains and blood and death, and all of these things just came out of me, and I just cried and cried and cried. And I was like, what just happened to me? Like, how did this just become a thing? Like, I don't know what's going on. And she like just starts to break it down to me and talk to me. And I was like, I'm hooked. I want to come in here and I want to paint. I want to do all of this stuff. Like, I need to release all of this out of me. If this is how it happens, then this is how it happens. So I was doing that through art and through music and yoga and breath work. The mission sets are very interchangeable between battalions. We used to be regionally aligned. 1st Raider Battalion would go to PACOM, or the Pacific Command region. 2nd Raider Battalion would go to Central Command, or like the Middle East. And then 3rd Raider Battalion would go to AFRICOM, or the African region. In MARSOC, we deploy for 6 months together. And then we do an 18-month training for deployment. In the movies, sometimes it's the president that gets this order that's like, we need to do this now. And then next thing you know, it's this MARSOC team that's about to jump out of a plane and go shoot up a village, and it's like far beyond what's actually real. There's a huge process behind it, and it's actually a lot longer and a lot more bureaucratic than people would think. So we do a lot of PowerPoint. We put all of these different contingencies in there. There's weather situations. If the weather is too bad and we can't get a helicopter or medevac in there in a certain time frame, because we know that if somebody gets hurt, they get killed, we can't get them out fast enough to help save their lives. There's a lot of different moving pieces though, like with the signals intelligence and the human intelligence and things like that, without going into things that I can and can't talk about. A lot of the times these missions will come from a higher entity, and us sitting at our team space in that region that we're deployed to, we'll get a email, and they'll be like, hey, we just got this information. We need you guys to build a package. You're going to go here. So then we plan, we do everything. We could make mock villages, we could make mock buildings, and we can do all of our rehearsals, and rehearsals are key. If we don't do the rehearsals, the mission set could be a failure. It's all very crucial, because then it like builds it into our minds of like where to go, what route to turn on. And there are different levels of missions. Whenever we were in Iraq in 2016, it was still very politically sensitive, because we still didn't fully understand where ISIS was, what they were doing, what their stronghold positions looked like. Whereas in 2020, when we went there, we had already done the huge offensive. We had taken Mosul back. We had taken all of these different huge areas back. We would still have to get approval, but it wasn't as high, because we knew that these bad dudes were there. We're trying to get them out now. The teams within MARSOC, they're very small. We start out initially with about 9 operators. So our initial 9 operators right off the bat would be the officer in charge, who is a special operations officer. We always try to have a weapons sergeant or a weapons specialist. We have some sort of engineer, some sort of communications expert, and then we have the medic. We start with those 9 to 12 guys or gals, and then we end up deploying with almost 20 people in the team. We used to have explosive ordnance disposal guys, so EOD techs. We used to have multi-purpose canine handlers. You can even get as far as a geointelligence, so people who make maps. Like we can deploy with those types of guys. So it gets very specific, depending on the region that we're going to, the mission set that we have. We have different command structures within the region that we're in. And so it starts with our team, and then we report to our company, and then they report to another higher level of command. And if they can't do it, then they have to go all the way to the theater command. So whenever we get to a certain area, we're basically designated, and we find these people that are in need of our help. But specifically in Iraq, there was a flot, so the forward line of troops, and there was a big berm built up. And those people that we were helping on the other side of the berm were the Kurdish partners. In 2020, when I went back there, we were a part, or got attached to, the counterterrorism unit for the Iraqi Special Forces. So it honestly just depends on where we're going and who we partner with. So I got to learn Arabic for 6 months. And then when I went to Iraq, they spoke Kurdish. Then I went to Jordan, and then they spoke the Levantine dialect. I'm like, I at least have like the very formal like Arabic structure, which was very hard, but it was one of those bonding things. They actually thought it was hilarious when I would try to speak to them, because I would speak in this, like, they would call it like the King's English, like the very formal, like, but then, you gain that trust and that respect for them, because it's like, hey, like, I want you guys to go do this on your own. And so then they look up to us, and they're like, well, I'm going to do everything that I can to make you proud. And so that it's a very rewarding and a very like fulfilling type of thing whenever you see them, and then you get to send them out there to do that stuff. At this one point, I got invited to go share my story at a fundraising event. And they were like, hey, we want you to be the guest speaker and just talk to the donors and give them a story on what happened to you. So I start talking, I started sharing the story, and then immediately like all of these emotions started rising. And like, I feel like this release in tension, like I'm talking to random strangers about it, but the next thing you know, like I was like, I want to be able to share my story and my experiences in hopes that other operators understand they're not alone. And it just clicked. I was like, I know what I'm going to do now. I'm going to start this nonprofit, and that's how Talon's Reach Foundation was born. The name was chosen based off of a friend of mine, Talon Leach. July 10th, 2017, there was a plane crash over Mississippi. C-130 took off from Cherry Point, North Carolina, taking some Marines out to do training in Yuma. When they took off from Mississippi, there was a malfunction with one of the rotors on the plane, detached from the plane and cut the fuselage in half at like 30,000 feet. Killed everybody on the plane, so 15 Marines, 1 sailor, all died that day. 7 of those guys were from my company. And that night I got the phone call from my command saying that, you know, there was an incident, there was a plane crash, and our guys were on that plane. And Talon was one of those, and he has you on his paper to go notify his wife. I was like absolutely distraught about the whole situation, because I thought that stuff only happened in movies. We fill out these paperwork, these things called personal effects worksheets before we go on every deployment. And it's kind of like a will. And it has certain requests in there, and if something bad were to happen to me, this is who I want to go notify my family. And he put me in there as that guy. We went through selection together, we went through training together, we went through Arabic school together, we got assigned to the same company. It was in between our first and second deployment, and he was on that plane, and man, I had to get dressed in my alphas. It's the green uniforms that the Marines have, and you only use that to notify families of death or to change commands or check into a new command. So when she saw me in that uniform approaching their house, she knew immediately. And it was hard because, you know, she was a close friend. We were trying to think of something very significant for the nonprofit, and you know, I had dealt with his death and in the wrong ways, I guess. You know, I did what we knew how to do best, and I drank and I worked harder, and you know, my family life struggled because of it. And then it was, you know, at this time when we were thinking of names and like, hey, we want to call the participants Eagles, we're like, well, Talon's Reach, like that would be very like metaphorically symbolic for this whole event, you know, like that's kind of the power in the name and why we chose it. We were founded January of 2021 was when we first actually incorporated. Our very first fundraiser was held on July 10th of 2021. And then from there, we finally moved out to Montana, Bozeman, Montana, and we started everything out there. And we ran through 12 programs now, and we've helped 65 special operators. We did our first program in Jackson, Wyoming in February of 2026. We're really starting to move, we're really starting to evolve. The impacts that we're having are absolutely profound. It's those self-destructive habits that we all knew too well are something that's taking more lives than helping. And that's one very hard thing to realize, is that we're not going to be able to save everybody. And the bottle is still going to be one of our worst enemies. You know, we fight so hard. We go through so much, the world's hardest training, these selections, fight for this country, but we don't even know how to live for it. We're so good at compartmentalizing and holding all of this stuff in. Years of combat and years of training, and don't want to show weakness and don't want to ask for help. You think the only way out is to quit, when quitting has never been in our dictionary. And it's hard to say that I was a victim of it as well. I was an extreme alcoholic, and I didn't know how to ask for help, and I had already asked one time, and it just wasn't working, but God had another plan. And he knew that I was here to help people. So it is not easy. It's hard being on that side, wanting to do it and only wanting to quit, and then having somebody follow through with it and actually being gone from it. And it's just like, why would you do this to us? I wish you would have just asked me. I wish you would have just talked to me. Like, I would much rather hear you talk for hours and cry to me and whatever you got to do than me put my damn uniform back on to go bury you. It's hard. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help save lives, change that thought process. Sorry. On August 26th, 2021, I would be awarded the Navy Cross, which is the second highest award for valor that you can receive in the military for actions taken on the battlefield. My actions on March 8th, 2020 were the reasons why I was awarded this Navy Cross. It's also a very significant and profound day. August 26, 2021 is the same day that the Abbey Gate bombing happened that killed service members and several other people that day, but it was also Talon's birthday, which was just absolutely wild. So I felt very connected to the guys that were lost that day, and ended up going up on 9/11 to Walter Reed. My wife was like, hey, like, I think that, you know, it would be really good for you to show face and just see them. You know how bad it feels to sit up there in that hospital. So maybe you can go see them and bring Fletcher along with you and show him some comfort. So Fletcher and I here, we have been together for 5 years now, actually this week. In May 2021, he was gifted to me. He was donated to me through an organization out of Jefferson City, Missouri, because I was having panic attacks and anxiety and depression, and just having a companion there with me when I was traveling back and forth to appointments and things like that would bring me a lot of joy. And Fletcher has become a healing entity for very, very many, for a lot of people. Come here. And so he's he's flown with me everywhere. He's visited people in hospitals. He's been at every single program that we've ran with Talon's Reach Foundation, and he is very much the icon of our organization. And he's a goofball chocolate lab, but oh yeah, is that what you got to say? But at this point, like, I couldn't imagine life without this dog. Like, he's saved me more times than he knows. I was born and raised in Olathe, Kansas. I knew that I wanted to join the Marine Corps, but I ended up getting into a path of very troubled as a young kid. So drinking, I guess, heavily at like 12, 13 years old. I started smoking weed. I did all of this stuff. And then the heavier things kind of came on sooner after that. So I was very much an outcast, but I liked to fight, and I liked to, do very adventurous, extreme things. Kansas was not the place for me. I got involved in the wrong crowd. I was drinking, I was selling and doing other drugs, and I worked at a skateboard shop. I got into a big fight in the back room of the skate shop, and the cops showed up in the doorway, and they basically pointed at me. I think they knew who I was, and I was like, great, here we go. And I was like, I'm gonna run right past them. I know I can make it. And they were standing in a doorway, two huge cops in uniform. I tried to run, and they just basically clotheslined me, threw me into the wall, handcuffed me, waited for my boss, my mom, and a huge crowd in the mall. And so I felt like a big POS. And so when I got in there, I was like, well, they already know I'm in jail, so I might as well call my recruiter. So I used my one phone call, called my recruiter and said, hey, I'm not going to make it. I'm in juvenile detention again, and I'm sorry. So he's like, okay, I'll be at your house when you get out. So then I finished out my house arrest. I continued on that path of sobriety and continued on more community service and involvement with the recruiting station until I finally got through school and then said, hey, as soon as I can go, I'd like to go to boot camp. And then, we made it happen. I did all of my stuff as a Hollywood Marine, so a West Coast Marine. San Diego, California, beautiful spot. After the 13 weeks of boot camp, they assign you to the School of Infantry. And they do like the first few weeks as basic infantry tactics, and then you go off to your specialties. But whenever they were reading off the MOSs, the military occupational specialties, the one that I did not want to do that was last on my list was a mortarman. I didn't want to be an 0341. I wanted to be a rifleman or a machine gunner. The last one was mortarman. What did the Marine Corps do? They picked me as a mortarman. What I imagined the mortarmen doing were support roles, sitting back there playing spades. That's exactly what they did. The culture of the Marine Corps really got bred into me, and that's what they did. They loved to drink and they liked to fight, but it's like that's not who I wanted to be necessarily. So I see these snipers running around in their ghillie suits. I was like, that's what I want to do. How do I do that? In 2011, I went on the 31st MU, so Marine Expeditionary Unit. It's basically a big ship that floats around, and we go to all of these different places in the Pacific. But it was on that ship I became really close friends with all of these snipers, and was like, hey, how do I take this selection? Fast forwarding to the end of that deployment, middle of 2011, get back home, and I get selected for the sniper platoon. We did a number of training within Camp Pendleton, and we were doing land navigation, running through the mountains of Camp Pendleton, and I came across this trailer with this sign, this banner, MARSOC, and this guy with this cool helmet on and this sweet gun in his hand. As soon as I finished that land navigation course, came back to base, cleaned up, I drove over to that trailer, and I walked inside, I was like, hey, what is MARSOC? He's like, here, sit down, let me tell you about it. So he tells me all about it, and he's like, however, you need to have either 2 deployments. I hadn't even been in the Marine Corps for 2 years yet. So he said 2 deployments or 2 years time in service, and you can come in. So I came home for my second deployment after Afghanistan, and he's like, well, now you need to be an E4, which is a rank structure, so enlisted, which is a corporal. So E4 is a corporal. They kept changing their selection criteria, which was a little frustrating, but I was like, okay. I ended up picking up E4 the next month, which was awesome. So as soon as I could, bam, I came back in there. To me, I think the very obvious differences that I can see with the conflicts and the possible warfares that we're seeing right now in the world is in Afghanistan, early Iraq, even the fight against ISIS. Sometimes it was hard to see and tell who the enemy was, and sometimes with the insurgencies and things like that, it wasn't as cut and dry as this is a very conventional force. They have conventional style equipment. They have tactics, techniques, procedures. They've got equipment. They've got drones. They've got everything that we have. And some people are beating us in that technological warfare. You could be matched with somebody that's got a very close capability to you. And it's not as easy. In Iraq and Afghanistan, you could feel we were on top. We had all the air assets, we had all of this, but it's if our air assets can't fly and our spies in the sky can't do what they're doing, then how do we have the upper hand here? It's a very even keel battle. So we had drones. They were bigger. They were slower moving. They could only loiter in certain areas. You got one shot. These drones now, I'm seeing videos, they can fly back and forth and they can do all these things, and then boom, they can go into car windows and do all of this stuff. It's wild because we saw how effective ours were when we did them, and now if they've got headsets where they can drive these things like race cars. It's just beyond scary. I've heard drones fly over my head before, and they're normally just filming stuff. But if I heard that and I knew it had a bomb attached to it, like, that's no thanks. What's really fascinating right now in the change in dynamics and war and all of that stuff is the Marine Corps is actually going towards like Marine commandos now. So the Marine Corps is actually starting to specialize in smaller teams and smaller units, and they're trying to get this broader special operations kind of feel to what they're doing. We learn a lot from all the other conflicts going on in the world, and if we're not continuing to evolve and adapt to what's happening, then we're falling behind. I've told my junior Marines all the time is that it's not if, it's when. And some of these guys that have joined are upset that they don't get to go see combat, and they're, it's not my time and this and that. And I've told people, don't try to chase combat, because you could be one of the unfortunate ones to go one day. It's not as fun or as glamorous as people think. Like, real things happen out there. People die, people get hurt. When you're there, it's as real as you could imagine. The military, I think, was one of the best things that I could have ever done for my life. Coming from an adolescent, like juvenile detention kid, to having discipline and the drive and the fortitude to continue to keep moving forward. That no quit mentality is still with me very much today. So there's so many positives that I've taken, and some of the negatives that I saw at the beginning are now just a transition into my lifestyle that I use as fuel. And I say, like, I've felt depression, I've felt sadness, I've experienced PTSD, but like, those things are not going to hold on to me. They're not going to grip me, and they're not going to define me. I'm Nick Jones. I'm going to take this life as it comes. Like, I've got a beautiful wife, Hannah. I've got a beautiful daughter. If it wasn't for my wife standing by my side and dealing with my stuff for so long, like, if she would have given up on me, she's my rock. She's everything that I've got. Like, I have the support that I need to continue to push to do the things that I want to do in life. I've what-ifed so many things in life, but the one thing that, like, I know for certain is that I gave it my all. All of the pain, all of the suffering, all of the grief, everything, like, it is worth it. Whatever that end point is, whatever, you set your mind to, like, just continue to keep pushing towards it.
Hi, I'm a producer on Authorized account. If you enjoyed this video, then please subscribe and comment with more topics that you'd like us to cover in this series.